Hello, folks. Welcome to this edition of Al's Joint as we delve into Trump's attempt to shred our Constitution and we touch base on the Epstein scandal. Joining me will be Dennis Painter, co-host from Xenia, Ohio, as we pay homage to Kenny Loggins. This is it. Let's take the gloves off. Let's get at it. Okay, folks, we're here with my co-host, Dennis Painter, a longtime union activist from Xenia, Ohio, which is somewhere in southwest of Ohio. How you doing, Brother Painter?
I'm doing well today. How about you?
I'm doing great. I got this new saying that if I wake up, I'm good. Everything else is gravy after that. Hey, we want to jump right into Trump's assault on our Constitution. And to me, I believe that the Constitution can withstand Trump if the people protect their Constitution. So let's jump right into that. I'm going to ask folks, jump on Google and read your Constitution. Read the 27 amendments as well, because those amendments were put in place after the original Constitution was written, and the powers that be immediately started trying to find ways to corrupt it and bypass it. But let's start off with the Second Amendment, which everybody is aware of. And I think that for rightfully so, I believe that the Second Amendment may be our savior.
I think so. I'd like to start out by saying I'm on these podcasts. I'm not here to, say that you should change your party. I'm here because our country's in trouble with the current leader. I'm not trying to get Republicans to change parties. Just not. I mean, we have to point out when people make mistakes, when we've made a mistake by electing the wrong person, and then proceed how we're going to get that person out. So I'm on these podcasts for that reason. Now, the Second Amendment says that we have it calls for a well-armed militia, and there's been a debate throughout the last few years about what does that really mean. A well-armed militia doesn't mean that everybody's running around with a flintlock. Okay, now that's what it meant then, but when the Constitution and the Second Amendment was developed, but now it means a well-armed militia is being equal to any force that's out there that may come and try to take our government away. A well-armed militia, the Second Amendment wasn't meant to overthrow our government; it was meant to protect our government. And I think if you take a look at what's going on today with Trump using troops in DC, with him threatening to move troops into Chicago, into New York, with his removal of top Army officials, I think it's pretty daggone clear where he's headed. And I think that he's the one that's trying to overthrow our government.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that if folks look at the Third Amendment, it states that no soldiers, unless in time of war and never in time of peace, shall be quartered in the houses of the citizens. And back then, my interpretation that is that our founding fathers wanted to make sure that there was no militia or no armies in our cities. But back then, the only way you could quarter the army or the servicemen was to put them in the houses of civilians. And so they wanted to make sure they protected it against that. So he's in violation of the Third Amendment. But I believe that our only hope is the Second Amendment, that we have a right to be armed and we have a right to make sure that we can protect ourselves and our constitutional rights.
I agree with that. I did a little bit of reading, and part of my concern is where it's clear that Trump's going. And you look at what he started when he took office in 2025 is he discharged some of the old, what I call the old guard of armed forces, and got rid of them. And the basic reason is they're dedicated to the Constitution. They took an oath to the Constitution, and they would defend the Constitution over the president of the United States. And that's what you're supposed to do. And he can't have that. And so I looked at some of the amendments, and the one that stuck out to me was the 10th Amendment that's being violated by Trump, and that's that there's certain rights that the federal government has, and there's certain rights that the states have, and what's not in the Constitution, the federal government does not have the rights to. And this one of the separations was the right to police. The state has the right to police. The federal government doesn't have the right to send in troops to police another state. And that was a balance of power was the purpose of that, so that not one agency or one state or one group would have all the power. And so that was put in, and that's been violated, and moving the National Guard into California, moving in people into DC, the threat to move the National Guard into New York and Chicago. That's if Trump does that over the wishes of that state government, then he's in violation each time of the 10th Amendment.
In addition to that, the 10th Amendment also says that the states have a right to set their own voting policies as long as they don't discriminate. So he's saying that he's going to do away with mail-in ballot. That's another direct violation of the 10th Amendment.
Right.
So he's just taking the Constitution and think he's going to put it in a shredder and then piece it back together so it suits his administration. And we can't allow that to happen.
I agree. And I think this all points us back to the Second Amendment is, aside from our protest, which we have a right to do, and the freedom of speech and all that, he's trying to shut that down as well. But how are we going to stop a single person from overthrowing our government? Now, the Second Amendment doesn't give the citizens the right to overthrow the government, but it does give us the right to protect our government, to protect our Constitution from people like Donald Trump. And thank goodness the forefathers that developed the Constitution and put the Second Amendment in there had the foresight to see that there was greed, there was power-hungry people in this world, and people that were dictators in this world that wanted to take over. And so they put that in there as a safeguard.
And I think that's a good point, that people understand that the amendments were put in to the Constitution because there was a need, meaning that right after the initial Constitution was written, there were powers that be that started looking at a way to disarm you. That's where the Second Amendment came from. When the government started thinking that they could send soldiers around the country, the Third Amendment was put in. So they've seen this happen before. People just, if you do your research, you'll see that what Donald Trump is doing has been attempted before, but normally in pieces. He's trying to do it all at once so he can throw everything he has against the wall, and if something stick, he wins. And I think we have to be aware of that. I believe that eventually what he wants to do, he wants to normalize troops being around. The distraction that he's creating, he can create 1,000 distractions. That's not the reason he's doing this particular part. I believe he's doing this particular part so it'll be so normal that when he does it at next year's midterms, when there's National Guard at the polling places, and he's going to broadcast that ahead of time. So he's going to hope to keep Hispanics away from the voting polls. He's going to try to make it harder for seniors to vote because they won't be able to vote by mail. And he's going to think that by doing those things, that he can intimidate enough folks, he can win the election, because he has to win the midterms. He can't lose it, because if he does, his presidency is over, and he knows that, which is going to lead to a series of things that all are bad for him.
Correct. And one more thing is, if you look at it, he's trying to stop the ability of people to voting just basically through intimidation, but stopping the mail-in ballots. Who's affected by that? number one, our troops overseas, okay, they're going to be affected. He's saying that the people protecting freedom that put their lives, in danger every day for the idea of freedom cannot vote by mail ballot. Now, they can't come home either. Okay, so he's eliminating that entire sector from voting. And then you take a look at college students who are out of state. Okay, you got to come in and vote. You can't do mail in ballot. You either do early voting if you can, but it's going to eliminate more students from being able to vote. And then you have the seniors who have, because of their age, don't have transportation to get to the polls, eliminating a certain sector of them from voting if you get rid of mail-in ballots. And the whole concept is to hijack the elections, and it's taking away voting rights. And as well as I do, is the citizens had to fight for everyone having the right to vote. This whole fight about voting is about controlling. But Trump's taken it a step further. And I said this before, his legacy in his mind, his great legacy is I'm not only going to be the president, but I'm going to overthrow the government. And my legacy is I'm going to be the king. And that's what I see him doing. And with him eliminating top military officials as a first step when he came in, the old guard, and I've listened to some of them say, look, our oath was to the Constitution. Our oath is to protect that Constitution, protect our country, protect our people. That's why he's eliminating those. And he's instilling fear within the armed forces.
I agree, and I believe that he would easily give up allowing our servicemen overseas or anyone who's stationed away from their home state the chance to vote, because that you're talking tens of thousands of folks. But what he's trying to do is disenfranchise millions of voters around the country.
Right.
So that's an easy trade-off for him. So we'll see. But there's a lot of time for us to gear up to fight. I'm just asking folks, and I'll be doing that throughout this podcast. If you're on the other side of the aisle, if you're a Republican and you care about your Constitution, engage in this fight with everybody else. We should be able to work with each other to save our Constitution. Doesn't matter if you're a white, black, Hispanic, Native American, Indian, Latino. All of us together need to engage in this fight. So, because in the end, it's going to affect some people, but in the end, it's going to affect everybody. Everybody's rights are going to be taken away.
I mean, you're right, but I want to add a little bit. I know a lot of Republicans. I obviously live in Ohio. You can't not live in Ohio, not know Republicans, okay? And they're good people, all right? I mean, basically down to earth good people. Now, we have different political views on certain things, but on the Second Amendment, I don't think so. I think we have the same view on the Second Amendment. And I think that the Republicans need to take a look at that and say, look, this is about us protecting something that's important to us, and not look at it as, oh, that's the far left. It's not a far left. It's right down the center, the Constitution. And democracy, we're going to have different opinions. We always have it in terms of right, left, whatever you want to call it. We've always had that. We always will, as long as we have a democracy. That's what democracy is. If Republicans want to preserve their right under the Second Amendment, they need to be speaking up. They need to be saying this guy has mental issues and has control issues, is not who we want to lead this country. And it doesn't mean you have to change your party. I'm not advocating that. Just speak up.
Agreed. So we're going to pivot over to the Epstein fiasco. And I still don't understand why it's not at the front and center of every news outlet every day until we figure out what the hell happened to those young girls. And some folks are letting it slide because he throws other stuff out there, but you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I know the Democrats are keeping it front and center, but I'm starting to notice that some of these news outlets are starting to let it slip to the back burner. And we've always had the Epstein list. I'm going to name some names that are on the list. I mean, these are the most important names on the list. I'm not going to use their last name because I want to make sure I don't put anybody out there. But these names are on the official list: Vicky, Emma, Crescenda, Kimberly, Courtney, Cecilia, Mary, Lynn, Shanna. You know who they are? They're all victims. That's only some of the victims, right, that you can read through. Like I said, I didn't include their last name, but that's the only list you need. So we need to know from those victims who violated you. So we should be speaking to them. It doesn't have to be, I don't want them in front of Congress unless they want to be. But why isn't the Department of Justice reaching out to those folks saying, who violated you? You don't need to uncover the other list. You have the victims there to tell you firsthand who violated them. Who better to tell you than them?
Well, I think that from what I see, Al, is there's absolutely a cover up. You're right that we've had the files. First Trump administration, when he was in office, had the files, and there was a cover up because it would shake up the administration too much, and it would shake up both parties because there's people on that list from the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party, very prominent people, world leaders. I'm not just talking about the United States, world leaders. If you were a working class person, you would never have the money to get on Epstein's island. It was a high priced place to go to rape underage girls. One person was brave enough to get on TV and say, look, sometimes I was raped 3 times a day. Now, underage, can you imagine that? We're not holding those people accountable. And to your point about the media, Trump is, trying to intimidate the media too from reporting the truth and the facts. While he's busy moving troops into Washington, D.C. to fight quote unquote crime, he's not getting that list and saying, okay, all these pedophiles here need to pay for what they've done. Okay, because he knows that those names are on there. Now, his name's been redacted, I'm sure. And the whole thing with Maxwell being transferred from a maximum security prison to a spa out in Texas is only going to lead to her getting a pardon by Trump. And I'm speaking to Democrats, Republicans, Independents, whatever. If that doesn't tell you that Trump is guilty, nothing will.
I've been saying it from the beginning, and I'll continue to say it. I believe that Donald Trump is one of the biggest pedophiles in that group. And you're right. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent. If you're a pedophile, you need to be in jail. What bothers me is the hypocrisy, right? You're sending troops into these cities to fight crime, but you're a pedophile and a 34-time felon. You need to send those troops into the White House, but if you did that, there probably wouldn't be nobody in there, including the First Lady. You probably hear echo throughout the White House if you took all the pedophiles and criminals out of there. You look at some of the folks in his cabinet, there's quite a few that have records dealing with sexual misconduct. It's almost like it's a precursor for getting hired into one of those positions.
Well, if Trump and his administration, if the Republican leadership really cared about the rule of law, which they say they do, but then ignore arresting these pedophiles, including holding Trump accountable, they are lying to themselves and they lying to the Republican supporters. They don't care about the rule of law. You can't send troops in to D.C. and New York and Chicago based off of crime and saying, oh, but don't look at what I've done. Don't look at what any number of very rich people have done, very prominent politicians have done. Let's protect them, let them break the law. While these women suffer, I mean, they were underage girls at the time, but now they suffer. They'll suffer the rest of their life. The second crime is the people that are not being held accountable. So those women need justice. And if you believe in the rule of law, then you need to speak up. And it's speaking up for what's right. It's speaking up for protecting young girls. It's speaking up to protect the future of young girls.
I go back to the hypocrisy because I'm watching Fox News. Yes, I do watch Fox News. I watch everything so I can get a perspective from every side. They have Jim Jordan on, who himself was accused of sexual misconduct with underage boys. They have Jim Jordan, the congressman from Ohio, on talking about the Epstein files. He said that the Epstein file, based on what they learned from Ghislaine Maxwell, that meant that we could close the Epstein file. How do you bring on somebody on your show who has a history of sexual misconduct with underage boys that talk about the Epstein case, putting it to rest? That congressman is from your state.
Well, maybe the congressman elected by the state, but I wouldn't necessarily call him mine. You can't, a crook saying that I believe in law and order doesn't believe in law and order. They're trying to say, put this thing to bed. And one of the things that stands out for me is Trump getting mad at his own supporters, demanding that the files be made public. And then they're saying, well, look, I'm not going to support you anymore. And he said, I don't care if you support me anymore. I don't need you anymore. So what he's saying is, I'm not going to do what I said I was going to do. I only said that to get you to support me. Bringing the Epstein files out and bringing justice to the women was just a ploy to get people to vote for him. He does not believe in the law. And I agree with you that he's been a pedophile all his life, and he'll continue to be a pedophile.
My heart still goes out to all those women who were affected. We can't protect our own children as a country. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, if you're Catholic, Baptist, Jewish, no matter who you are, if you think it's okay to let pedophiles not only go, but you promote them. None of this stuff is new. There are a lot of folks who don't do research. They just look at TV for a couple minutes a day. They get their information from there. So they might have been bamboozled. But there was a lot of folks who voted for Trump who knew this. They thought it was okay.
Here's what I've heard. And obviously, not only do I live in a red state, but I have family that they voted for Trump. I'm looking at it from the point of view is they're good people. They're not bad people. They would not say that it's right to rape any woman or underage girl, and that them being silent is only helping pedophiles continue to do what they're doing. I think it's shameful. We can't change what Trump has done, but we can at least bring peace to those women as much as justice can bring. Nothing will erase the scars.
I have a suggestion for the Trump administration. Take all of those National Guards, any other law enforcement officer that you feel you have enough time to send them to other states, and put them on trying to stop this child trafficking that's going on in our country. Let's try to take that money instead of having them sitting in front of Dunkin' Donuts in Washington, D.C. Assign them to help stop this child trafficking that's going on in our country. How about that? How about spending that money? I guarantee you the taxpayers will not complain one bit if you're spending that money to help save our children.
That is an absolute excellent point, and it's on target. If you believe in stopping crime, then let's stop crime. And I could go on about that. And if you send the National Guard out, well, let's go after these drug traffickers, not just the sex trafficking industry. And it is an industry. It's rampant, and it's rampant in this country. I wonder, like I said, I know Republicans, they're good people. What's it going to take for you to say enough's enough? I'm not changing parties, but Trump needs to go, to stand up. If they don't, Trump's going to take the country over, and it's going to be Castro, like he did, he sent military from door to door and took guns away from people. And we're back to what we started initially on this podcast is the Second Amendment. That's what happened. He promised freedom. He promised everything people wanted to hear. Then once it was in place, he went and took away the very things that people wanted.
I'm glad you touched on that, because we go back to the promises he made, right? He promised to cut the cost of food. Other than 1 month since he's been in office, that was a slight tick downwards. Food has went up. He promised to lower the price of gas. The price of gas has creeped back up. It's never come down, but it's starting to creep up even higher. He promised to end the war on day one. We all knew that was ridiculous, but at least you would think that if you were going to show that you were serious about ending the war, not telling Ukraine that by ending the war mean you give half of your country. Can you imagine if squatters took over your house and you called the police, you went to court, and the judge said, look, we got to figure this out. I'll give them the whole basement and part of the yard, and you can keep the rest of your house. It's ridiculous, right? He said he'd deport criminals and the villains right away. What is he doing? He's taking everyday undocumented mothers and fathers and children and forcing them out of the country without even due process. We're not talking about they had anything on their jacket, right, that would warrant them being in the penal system or anything. Just folks that they needed to get numbers, so they started raiding places to get these everyday folks that were contributing to our society. So all the promises that he made, like you're going back to your question, what's it going to take? He didn't do any of that stuff. The obvious thing he said was, I'm going to release the Epstein files or all the information related to it. So he's done nothing but a sliver of item number 4, which was, I'm going to try to get as many people that don't look like us out of this country as possible. Brother Painter, as always, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. You know we're going to do it in the future.
One last point. I want you to know, I own many guns, okay? And that I believe in the Second Amendment, and I plan on keeping my guns. And I'm going to do what I need to do to keep them. So,
Well put. Well, look, take care of yourself, and I'll see you on the other side. So, folks, I want to thank you for joining me today. Please make sure you hit share, like, and subscribe. And don't forget to leave your comments below. I want to know what you're thinking. I'll catch you next Friday on the other side. Peace.
This episode of Al's Joint is brought to you by the Peabody Highlander 1975 through 1981 Class Reunion Committee.